Welcome to Cosmic Bedtime. Tonight, we turn our gaze once again to the moon, not as a distant dream, but as a destination within reach. A place where footprints once marked our boldest step, and where silence has lingered for over half a century, but now, a new generation dares to return. Not just to visit, but to stay, to build, to explore, to remember, and to look forward. This is the story of Artemis, a mission born not only of science and ambition, but of hope, legacy, and the quiet longing to touch the heavens once more. So close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let us carry you gently into the tale of humanity's second giant leap. There was a time, not so long ago, when humanity stood on the shores of another world. We planted our flag in the dust of the moon, spoke words that echoed through time. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, and looked back at Earth with a new sense of wonder. But then, we stopped. For over half a century, the moon remained untouched by human footsteps. Our gaze shifted elsewhere, toward satellites, space stations, and distant planets glimpsed only through telescopes. The moon became a memory. A magnificent one, yes, but somehow unfinished, and yet, dreams don't die so easily. In quiet corners of NASA's laboratories, in the sketches of engineers, in the voices of astronomers, and in the imaginations of children staring up at the night sky, a question lingered: when will we go back? The Apollo missions ended with Apollo 17 in 1972. That final crew left behind experiments, a rover, and footprints that still sit undisturbed on the lunar surface. Then, the rockets were retired, the funding was cut, and the political will dissolved. Why? It was a mix of cost, risk, politics, and shifting priorities. The world moved on. We built space shuttles, sent robotic explorers to Mars and beyond, and constructed the International Space Station, an engineering marvel orbiting just above our heads. But the moon remained there, watching, waiting. Something about the moon continues to call to us. Maybe it's because it's close enough to reach, yet distant enough to stir the imagination. Maybe it's the mystery of its far side, never visible from Earth. Or perhaps, on some instinctual level, we feel it's part of our destiny. The moon is our cosmic neighbor, our celestial mirror. It has seen our species evolve, survive, build civilizations, and gaze upward in wonder. It is the keeper of ancient impacts and silent nights. And unlike Mars or Europa or any distant world, the moon feels familiar. In a way, it's home, but a home we've barely begun to explore. In 2017, NASA announced a bold new vision: we are going back to the moon. But this time, not just to visit. This time, we would go to stay. The mission would be named Artemis, after the twin sister of Apollo in Greek mythology. Where Apollo was a symbol of masculine achievement, Artemis would bring balance. This time, a woman would walk on the moon, and not alone. It was a symbolic gesture, but also a statement of purpose. Artemis wasn't just a sequel, it was a new beginning. This wasn't about reliving the past, it was about reimagining the future. 50 years is a long time. The astronauts of Artemis were born after the Apollo missions ended. For many of them, the moon landings were history book chapters, not personal memories. Yet the wonder never left. This new generation of explorers grew up with smartphones, AI, and rovers sending selfies from Mars. They understand technology differently, they connect globally, and they carry a broader, more inclusive vision of what exploration should mean. They are not going to plant flags, they are going to plant ideas, that humanity belongs not just on Earth, but among the stars. Unlike the Cold War-era space race between superpowers, Artemis is not a solo mission. It is a collaboration, a tapestry of international partners and private companies, each contributing a thread. The European Space Agency is building service modules. Japan and Canada are contributing robotics and technology. Commercial partners like SpaceX and Blue Origin are building rockets and landers. Even Artemis spacesuits are being developed by private firms. This is not just America's return to the moon, it's humanity's return. Why go back now, after so many years? The answers are both practical and poetic. Practically, we've learned much since Apollo. Our materials are lighter, our rockets are stronger, and our understanding of space travel is deeper. The moon could serve as a testbed for deeper missions, to Mars and beyond. It has ice, which means water, which means the possibility of long-term presence. Poetically, because the dream never died. Because exploration is part of who we are. Because the moon is not the end, it's the beginning. The Artemis mission reminds us that we are still a species that dares. That even amid global challenges, climate change, conflict, pandemics, we still look up and ask, what's out there? And more importantly, can we go? Artemis is not just about technology. It's about storytelling. It is the next chapter in the human saga. One that future generations will read about, not in past tense, but as the beginning of a new era. A moment when we chose not to look backward with nostalgia, but forward with hope. Just as the first step on the moon in 1969 redefined what was possible, Artemis dares to ask what's next. It's a message to every child who has ever looked at the moon and wondered, what's it like to stand there? It's a message to all of us, we are not done dreaming. Not even close. So here we are, on the cusp of something extraordinary. We've returned to the launch pads. The rockets roar again. Engineers and artists, scientists and storytellers, all come together in this shared act of reaching. The moon waits for us. Not as a conquest, but as a conversation. The Artemis program is not just science. It is soul. Not just propulsion. It is poetry. And above all, it is proof that the dream we once held, that we could venture beyond the cradle of Earth, was never truly lost. It was simply resting. Now, at last, that dream has opened its eyes. The moon has never stopped shining. Night after night, it rises, quiet, glowing, timeless. It watches over Earth like a gentle sentinel, pulling at our tides, stirring our imaginations, and silently reminding us that we are part of something larger. But the question lingers, in classrooms and control rooms alike. Why go back? We've been there before. We left footprints, flags, and scientific instruments. We proved we could do it. Isn't that enough? And yet, when we truly listen, not just to reason, but to the quiet yearning in the human spirit, the answer is clear. No. It's not enough. We must return. Not out of pride, but purpose. Not for glory, but for growth. Not to repeat history, but to expand it. Let's explore why the moon matters, not just to science, but to humanity's future. The moon is not just a lifeless rock. It is a time capsule. Its surface has barely changed in billions of years. While Earth's history is rewritten by wind, rain, and tectonic shifts, the moon has preserved ancient secrets, locked in craters, frozen in dust, and etched in rock. By studying its surface, we gain a clearer window into the formation of the solar system, and even the early history of Earth itself. The answers to how planets form, how water arrived on Earth, and what conditions foster life may all be hidden within lunar soil. And then there's the ice. At the moon's south pole, tucked inside permanently shadowed craters, lies something extraordinary: frozen water. This discovery changes everything. Water isn't just for drinking, it can be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen, forming breathable air and rocket fuel. A lunar base near these ice deposits could sustain human presence and serve as a launch pad deeper into space. If we dream of walking on Mars one day, and we do, the moon is our training ground. It's close. Just 3 days away. That means if something goes wrong, help is possible. It's the perfect place to test long-duration missions, life support systems, habitat technologies, and surface operations under real space conditions. Living and working on the moon will teach us what it truly means to be interplanetary. It's like practicing on the first stepping stone before leaping across the river. And that river is vast. Space has always pushed the boundaries of technology. What we build for space eventually finds its way into everyday life: GPS, weather satellites, medical imaging, even the memory foam in your mattress. The Artemis program, with its network of public and private partnerships, is already fueling innovation. Robotics, renewable energy, autonomous systems, all of these are being advanced by the needs of lunar exploration. And where there is innovation, there is opportunity. The moon may even hold rare resources: helium-3, used in theoretical nuclear fusion, rare earth elements for electronics, and the potential for solar energy harvested without atmospheric loss. A sustainable presence on the moon could one day support not just science, but industry, and perhaps, in the distant future, even new economies beyond Earth. Unlike the Apollo era, Artemis isn't a race. It's a relay. Countries across the globe, Japan, Canada, the European Union, and more, are sharing in the vision. They're contributing rovers, modules, experiments, and expertise. Private companies are building landers, launch systems, and cargo vehicles. The moon is becoming a shared destination. A symbol of what humanity can achieve when we work not in competition, but in collaboration. And when we see astronauts from different nations, backgrounds, and genders walk together on the lunar surface, it will send a powerful message. This isn't just our moon. It's everyone's. There's another reason we go, a reason that doesn't fit neatly into charts or budgets. We go to inspire. When children watch a rocket rise and disappear into the sky, they begin to dream. They ask questions. They build cardboard spaceships. They imagine walking among stars. The moon is a mirror, not just of Earth, but of our potential. It reflects back who we are, and who we could be. In a world often filled with noise, division, and doubt, space gives us a story we can all share. A dream we can all point to. A horizon we can all chase. Going back to the moon tells a new generation. You belong to a species that explores. That builds. That dares. The moon also offers something subtle, something deeply human. A chance to begin again. We can go back with humility, with wisdom, with care. We can explore with better values, with diversity, sustainability, and responsibility at the core. We can protect the lunar environment, share its benefits, and ensure that space remains a place for peace. In this light, the moon becomes more than a destination. It becomes a canvas. A place where we decide what kind of future we want to write. One marked by curiosity, not conquest. By stewardship, not scarcity. By unity, not division. Sometimes, the strongest case for going, is the risk of not going. If we stop reaching, we stagnate. If we stop exploring, we lose something essential. Our ancestors once crossed oceans and deserts, not because it was easy, but because something inside them refused to settle. Exploration is more than a pursuit. It is a promise, to ourselves and to the future. When we stop asking, what's out there, we stop discovering who we are. There is a quiet poetry to returning to the moon. Because in its surface, we don't just see craters, we see questions. We see our past, a species once bound to the earth, looking up in wonder. We see our present, a fragile world seeking direction, meaning, hope. And we see our future, still unwritten, still wide open. The moon does not ask us to return. It does not need us. But in going there, deliberately, peacefully, with open minds and open hearts, we reveal the very best parts of ourselves. Our courage. Our cooperation. Our curiosity. Because it's time. Because we've grown. Because the story isn't finished. The moon waits, not as a relic, but as a gateway. Not as a final chapter, but as a prologue. We go not just to learn about the moon, but to learn about ourselves. In ancient myths, the sky was not empty, it was alive. Stars were the eyes of gods. The moon, a silent goddess drifting through the night. And in those stories, told beside fires and under stars, two names were always intertwined, Apollo and Artemis. They were twins. Born of the same celestial light. But where Apollo was the sun, bright, loud, and ever rising, Artemis was the moon. Quiet. Watchful. Wild. When NASA named its new lunar mission Artemis, it wasn't just choosing a name. It was making a statement. This was not a return to the past, but the beginning of something new. A mission not just to go back to the moon, but to go forward, guided by a different kind of light. Apollo was the program that first took us to the moon. Between 1969 and 1972, 12 men walked its surface, leaving behind boot prints and history. It was an incredible triumph of human engineering and ambition. But Apollo was born in a different world. The Cold War crackled in the background. The urgency was political. The astronauts were all white men, chosen from the ranks of fighter pilots. It was a giant leap, yes, but it wasn't yet a leap for everyone. Now, over half a century later, the world has changed. And so has our vision of space. Artemis, as a name, honors that change. She is the goddess of the moon, yes, but also of the wilderness, of the hunt, of protection and intuition. She walks silently under stars. She guards the vulnerable. She leads without seeking praise. By naming the new lunar program Artemis, NASA signals something quiet but profound. This journey will carry more of us. Different voices. Different dreams. A broader, richer story. When the first crewed Artemis mission lands on the moon, it will include the first woman and the first person of color to walk its surface. That moment, when their boots touch the dust, will be historic. Not because they are the firsts, but because they are finally there. For generations, space exploration was shaped by barriers, economic, educational, cultural. But Artemis is an opportunity to reshape the narrative. In classrooms around the world, little girls will look up and say, "I could go too." And not just as astronauts. Engineers. Flight controllers. Artists. Communicators. Programmers. Planners. Poets. Space belongs to all of us, not just those in the suits. This mission, this goddess, welcomes many kinds of explorers. There's something else subtle in the choice of Artemis. Something harder to measure, but deeply felt. A shift in tone. Apollo was masculine in energy, bold, direct, competitive. It was about racing, planting flags, proving what was possible. Artemis, though just as powerful, brings a different spirit. She is no less ambitious, but she is more reflective. More collaborative. More protective of the places she visits. This matters. As we return to the moon, and one day move beyond, it's not enough to build rockets. We must build relationships. With each other. With the environments we enter. With the future we are shaping. Artemis invites us to go to the moon gently, with reverence, with curiosity, and with care. She doesn't demand conquest. She calls for connection. In myth, Artemis walked the forests alone. She was independent, often distant, guided by instinct and the rhythms of nature. She sought not the spotlight, but the silence. In a way, that's how we find her now, waiting, quietly, on the lunar surface. The moon has been there all along. Watching. Waiting for us to grow. Not in strength, but in wisdom. To return not as conquerors, but as guests. Not to extract, but to understand. This is the deeper meaning of Artemis. Not just the name, but the myth reborn. A new kind of heroism. One rooted not in domination, but in devotion. Symbols matter. In the vastness of space, when distances stretch too far for words, we cling to symbols. They guide us. Anchor us. Give shape to the abstract. Artemis is one such symbol. She stands for inclusion, of women, of marginalized communities, of new voices. Sustainability, a promise to leave no scars on the moon. Peaceful exploration, no weapons, no borders, only science and cooperation. Long-term vision, not a visit, but a presence. In choosing Artemis, we remind ourselves that the future of space is not just about speed or strength, but about soul. Artemis, the mission, is not just led by astronauts. It is led by engineers who build with care, by scientists who ask new questions, by policymakers who write rules to protect what we explore, by storytellers who remind us why we go. This is a networked vision, a web of collaboration between nations, companies, universities, and individuals. The moon may be distant, but Artemis brings it close, by involving more people in the journey. It says, this is not just NASA's mission. It's yours too. Already, Artemis has begun. Artemis 1 was an uncrewed flight around the moon, a flawless test of the Space Launch System and Orion capsule. Artemis 2, soon to launch, will carry astronauts on a similar path, testing systems, teamwork, and trust. Artemis 3 will attempt the first human lunar landing since 1972. And it will change history, not because it's a return, but because it's a renewal. Beyond that, Artemis plans for lunar bases, scientific outposts, and a new kind of orbital platform, the Lunar Gateway, a space station circling the moon, a new home between worlds. This is no longer a single mission. It's a movement. And still, Artemis remains Apollo's twin. She does not erase him, but she complements him. Together, they form a cosmic balance. Sun and moon. Action and reflection. Light and shadow. Apollo showed us what was possible. Artemis shows us what is right. And when her astronauts walk into that ancient lunar light, they will carry both names. Both dreams. One, of reaching far. The other, of reaching together. There is a quiet revolution unfolding. Not in the roar of engines, but in the quiet return to the moon. Not in who gets there first, but in how we go. Artemis is not loud. She does not demand headlines. But she moves steadily, surely, gracefully. Her strength is in the silence. In the steps taken with purpose. In the vision that dares to be gentle in a world often drawn to force. In the end, Artemis is not just a goddess or a mission. She is a mirror. She reflects the best of what we can be. Bold but humble. Brave but compassionate. Powerful but peaceful. As we look up at the moon, glowing quietly in the dark, we don't just see a destination. We see a story, unfolding, inclusive, unfinished. And when the day comes, when boots touch lunar soil once more, it will not just be a landing. It will be a homecoming. The path to the moon is not paved in silver dust or cosmic dreams alone, it is forged in steel, sweat, and silent determination. If Artemis is to carry us back to lunar soil, she must walk a carefully built road, one that spans oceans, orbits, and decades of technological evolution. Let us begin with the rocket. At the heart of the Artemis program is the Space Launch System, or SLS. Towering over its launch pad, this colossal rocket is the most powerful NASA has ever built, exceeding even the legendary Saturn V in thrust and ambition. It is a modern chariot designed to carry humanity's aspirations beyond the confines of Earth. Every bolt, every weld, every engine test echoes with the voices of thousands of engineers, scientists, and technicians. Their collective knowledge, drawn from the space shuttle, Apollo, and newer technologies, culminates in this mighty machine. But it is more than an engine of fire. It is an act of faith. Faith that we are still meant to go, that exploration is not a chapter we've closed, but one we are still writing. When Artemis I lifted off, uncrewed yet full of symbolic presence, it was as if the earth exhaled after a long silence. The path had begun again. Atop the SLS rides Orion, a spacecraft designed for the human journey. She is a capsule reminiscent of Apollo, yet built for longer missions and deeper destinations. Inside her hull, she cradles the future astronauts of Artemis II and beyond. She is not flashy. She does not orbit Earth for tourists or boast touchscreen luxury. She is built for distance, for durability, for keeping human hearts beating in the vacuum of space. In her silence, there is resilience. Unlike Apollo, Artemis does not aim to touch the moon and return. It aims to stay. And to do that, we will need a home away from home, a gateway. Imagine a small space station, orbiting the moon in an elliptical dance. The gateway will serve as a lunar staging point, a place for astronauts to dock, transfer, and prepare for descent. It is a portal not just between Earth and Moon, but between past and future. A stepping stone for Mars, and beyond. In its orbit, we find a powerful metaphor, humanity beginning to inhabit space, not as visitors, but as residents. Built with international partners, ESA, JAXA, CSA, the Gateway reminds us that the journey to the moon is no longer one nation's race. It is a shared odyssey. Though NASA leads Artemis, it does not walk alone. Commercial partners, most notably SpaceX, are building critical components like the human landing system. SpaceX's Starship, with its ambitious fully reusable design, has been selected as the vehicle that will ferry astronauts from lunar orbit to the surface. It represents a convergence of old dreams and new ambition, of public goals and private daring. For the first time in history, humanity's return to the moon is being built not just by one space agency, but by a mosaic of minds, governmental, private, and international. The road is wider now. The road is shared. Even now, long before boots touch regolith again, robotic scouts like NASA's Viper rover are being prepared to map resources like water ice. These missions inform where we may one day build lunar habitats, structures capable of shielding us from radiation, micrometeorites, and the cold, dark lunar night. The dream is not just to visit, but to live. To build. To learn how to survive, so that one day, we might do the same on Mars. Each habitat concept, each solar panel laid in computer models, represents a quiet revolution, from fleeting steps to permanent presence. Yet perhaps the most profound road we are building is not physical. It is psychological. In our collective psyche, we are reawakening the belief that humanity belongs out there. The Artemis mission, with its intricate machinery and fragile humans, is reviving our dormant sense of cosmic purpose. Every component, from mission control algorithms to thermal shielding, is a thread in a tapestry far greater than the sum of its parts. This is not merely engineering. This is dreaming with tools. As we look up and imagine rockets roaring into the night, docking with orbiting gateways, and descending again onto ancient gray soil, we begin to see it more clearly. The moon is not just a destination. It is a beginning. And the road we build, though long and complex, is lit by starlight and held aloft by hope. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface in 1969, he spoke words that would echo through time. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. It was a moment carved into the bedrock of human history. But as unforgettable as it was also incomplete. Because for all its wonder, that giant leap was taken by only half of humanity. Now, over half a century later, Artemis is poised to finish what Apollo began, not just in destination, but in representation. This time, a woman will walk on the moon. And not just a woman. A person of color. Perhaps someone whose ancestors were once denied the stars, now reaching them with open hands. There's something powerful about being first. The first to touch a distant shore, the first to see the earth from another world. But there's also something deeply symbolic when those firsts carry a greater meaning, when they challenge the narrative of who gets to explore, who gets to represent humanity. The first woman on the moon will not only carry scientific instruments. She will carry the hopes of generations of women told they could not. Girls who watched rocket launches but rarely saw themselves in the suits. Scientists, engineers, pilots, often brilliant, often unseen. Her footprint in the lunar soil will say what no history book could quite capture. You belong here too. And the next man, he, too, walks a new path. He is not a repeat of Armstrong, not a shadow of history. He is a partner in something more inclusive, more conscious. His steps will echo not dominance, but unity. Together, they form a team. Not symbols of power, but of progress. NASA's Artemis team includes men and women of diverse backgrounds, test pilots, scientists, engineers, and medical doctors. Some were born before the internet. Others after September 11th. Some served in the military. Others studied coral reefs or space medicine. They represent different parts of Earth, and together, they represent Earth itself. They've trained underwater to simulate low gravity. They've learned to fly spacecraft and survive in isolation. But they've also learned something deeper, how to carry humanity on their shoulders, quietly and with humility. When we see them wave before launch, we won't just be watching astronauts. We'll be watching ourselves, our best selves. It's easy to view exploration as merely technical, new tools, new maps, new data. But it is also deeply cultural. Who we send, and how we send them, shapes the story we tell about ourselves. When a woman steps onto the moon, she is not only exploring the lunar surface. She is reshaping history. And not through defiance or revenge, but through quiet, steady presence. In that moment, a door opens wider. A girl watching from a small village, or a crowded city, or a refugee camp, she may whisper, "That could be me." And it won't be a fantasy. It will be true. Artemis is not just about touching lunar dust. It's about laying a foundation for future generations. The children who grow up seeing a woman on the moon may one day build ships to Mars. The scientists who follow these pioneers may discover life on Europa, or terraform deserts into gardens. The engineers may design lunar schools or Martian museums. But before all that, they must believe it is possible. The first woman and the next man give them that belief. They are the proof that exploration is not reserved for a chosen few. That it is a human endeavor, not a gendered one. That courage has no uniform body, no default face. When the dust settles and their boot prints mark a new chapter, there may be no fireworks. No parade. Just the quiet hum of a lander, the beeping of telemetry, the rustling of regolith beneath cautious feet. But in that quiet, something profound happens. A little more healing. A little more inclusion. A little more balance in the story of us. They will not be the last. But they will be the ones who open the sky a little wider for all who follow. The moon may only be 384,400 kilometers away, a mere stone's throw in cosmic terms, but returning there is anything but simple. It's not just a journey of distance. It's a journey of memory, of legacy, and of facing old fears with new eyes. Apollo showed us that we could go to the moon. Artemis must prove that we can go back, and stay. And that difference changes everything. In the 1960s, the world raced to the moon with the urgency of competition. Budgets soared, risks were accepted, and engineers often worked on instinct, innovation, and slide rules. Apollo was a marvel of human ingenuity, but much of it was custom-built for a single era, never meant to last beyond a few years. When we look at those old mission blueprints today, many are incomplete. The software written in assembly language is hard to translate to modern systems. The engineers who built the Saturn V rockets have long since retired, and many of their stories, tweaks, and insights left with them. In some ways, Artemis is not just building the future, it's rediscovering the past. To go home again, we must first relearn how we got there. Artemis isn't simply a sequel to Apollo, it's a reinvention. Apollo missions were short stays. Quick excursions. A few days of exploration followed by a swift return. Artemis, by contrast, seeks to build a sustainable presence. And sustainability means facing the kind of challenges that Apollo could sidestep. Radiation. The moon has no magnetic field or thick atmosphere to protect astronauts. Cosmic rays and solar flares pose significant dangers. Artemis must build smarter shielding, smarter suits, smarter shelters. Lunar dust, it clings to everything. It's sharp like glass. During Apollo, it scratched visors, jammed joints, and entered the lunar module. Long-term exposure could harm lungs and equipment. Artemis must find ways to live with the dust, perhaps even use it as a resource. Thermal extremes. Temperatures on the moon swing from -170 degrees Celsius at night to +120 degrees Celsius in the day. Habitats must be built to survive in this relentless cold and searing heat. Life support must be reliable. Power must be constant. Communication delays, while small, the lag between Earth and the moon matters. Crews must be trained for autonomy, making decisions when help is still a half-second away. Psychological isolation. Longer stays on the moon mean more time away from Earth, from loved ones, from the familiar rhythm of blue skies and rustling leaves. Artemis astronauts will face emotional gravity, the invisible pull of homesickness, fear, and solitude. To meet these challenges, Artemis doesn't just rely on rockets. It leans on a global network of collaboration. NASA works with private companies and international space agencies to develop technologies like Gateway, a small space station in lunar orbit, acting as a staging point for missions. Orion, a spacecraft designed to carry astronauts farther than any before. Starship HLS, SpaceX's contribution, a next-gen lander capable of touching down and taking off again. Each component must function perfectly in one of the most hostile environments ever attempted by humans. And because Artemis will build toward a lunar base, these systems must be modular, reparable, and resilient. Space isn't a blank canvas, it's a harsh one. There are no second chances 400,000 kilometers from home. Every time we launch humans into space, we confront a truth: exploration is never safe. And Artemis, despite its modern tools, is no exception. Rockets can fail. Heat shields can crack. Landers can tip. Even now, with half a century of spaceflight behind us, every mission is a leap of faith. But if we're honest, the greatest risks are not technical, they're human. Will we remain committed to the mission across decades of shifting politics and priorities? Will we fund science not just for prestige, but for purpose? Will we allow the moon to belong to all, or let it become another frontier of division? Artemis tests not only our technology, but our character. In some alternate timeline, Apollo was only the beginning. We might have moon bases by now. Gardens beneath lunar domes. Children who grew up in low gravity. But that didn't happen. After Apollo 17, the moon faded from public imagination. Exploration slowed. Budgets dried up. The dream went dormant. And that's the final challenge Artemis must face, the challenge of will. To go back, and keep going, we must believe it matters, not just for headlines, but for humanity. For what it teaches us about cooperation, about sustainability, about courage. We don't return to the moon because it's easy. We return because it's worth the effort. Going home is never simple. But sometimes, the hardest journeys are the ones that bring us back to who we truly are. Imagine waking up one morning, stepping outside your living quarters, and seeing Earth rise, blue, delicate, and distant, over a barren horizon of dust and stone. There's no breeze, no birdsong, only the silence of eternity broken by the faint hum of your life support system. You are on the moon. And this is home. Not a temporary camp. Not a brief scientific stop. But a permanent human outpost, a foothold on another world. This is the vision Artemis carries in its heart, not just to reach the moon again, but to stay. To build something lasting. Something meaningful. Something we can pass on. When the Apollo astronauts left their footprints in the lunar regolith, they knew those prints might last 1,000,000 years. But they also knew their presence wouldn't. They were visitors, bold, brilliant, but temporary. Artemis asks a different question. What if we didn't leave? To answer that, we must build differently. Think differently. Dream differently. A lunar base isn't a tent, it's a home in exile. It must endure heat, cold, radiation, and time. It must support life not just for days, but for weeks, months, even years. It must grow with us. In that sense, it becomes something more than just infrastructure. It becomes a symbol of permanence, a declaration that humanity belongs not only to Earth, but to the cosmos. Choosing a location for humanity's first real outpost on the moon is more than geography, it's survival strategy. The South Pole has emerged as a prime candidate. Unlike the equatorial Apollo landing sites, the lunar South Pole offers a unique advantage: sunlight and shadow. Sunlight, because the peaks near the pole experience near-constant illumination, ideal for solar power. Shadow, because deep craters nearby are in perpetual darkness, and may contain water ice. That ice could be everything: drinking water, oxygen for breathing, hydrogen for fuel. If we can mine and use that ice, we gain self-sufficiency, the first step toward true colonization. Early concepts of a lunar base vary, but certain elements remain common. Habitat modules, pressurized living spaces, possibly buried under regolith or shielded with inflatable domes, to protect against radiation and micrometeorites. Power stations, arrays of solar panels tracking the sun across the lunar sky, feeding energy to the base. Rovers and robots, autonomous or crewed vehicles to explore, transport, and maintain. Greenhouses, experiments in growing food, plants that thrive in artificial light, hydroponic trays, perhaps even lunar soil treated to hold roots. Science labs, not just for studying the moon, but for running experiments impossible on Earth. Some ideas are bold. 3D printing habitats using lunar soil. Using lava tubes, ancient underground tunnels, as natural shelters. Creating fuel depots for rockets headed to Mars. Others are humble. A small table where astronauts eat dinner and talk about their day. A camera pointing back at Earth, reminding them of home. Each detail is a thread in the fabric of our presence. Yes, the moon holds secrets, of the early solar system, of planetary formation, of cosmic history etched into its untouched crust. But the base we build there isn't just a scientific post. It's a cultural outpost too. Imagine artists visiting the moon, painting with words and pixels, inspired by the stark beauty around them. Imagine poets composing verses under the earthlight. Imagine musicians humming in low gravity, feeling rhythms altered by the moon's silence. The base becomes not just a station, but a sanctuary for the human spirit. A place where we ask, again and again, what does it mean to be human so far from home? The Artemis program is led by NASA, but it is not a solo endeavor. Nations around the world, Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia, and more, have signed on through the Artemis Accords, committing to peaceful exploration and mutual cooperation. A lunar base, in that sense, is not just an American dream. It is a human dream. But with shared vision comes complexity. Who decides what goes where? How do we handle conflicts, emergencies, or resource management? Can we truly keep the moon peaceful if it becomes strategically valuable? These questions aren't just hypothetical. They will shape the laws, ethics, and diplomacy of the next 100 years. Building a base is an engineering feat. Keeping it fair, open, and just, is a moral one. Earth has always been our cradle. But every cradle, eventually, is outgrown. A lunar base isn't an escape from Earth. It's an extension of it. A way to carry our best values, curiosity, courage, cooperation, into the wider universe. And in doing so, we redefine home. Home becomes not a single planet, but a network of places where life and meaning flourish. The moon will never feel quite like Earth. It lacks oceans, forests, skies. But perhaps, one day, it will feel familiar. The hum of life support. The rhythm of work and rest. The laughter of a crew around a shared meal. And when that happens, we will know. We are no longer guests on the moon. We are residents of the stars. In a sea of silence, we will build the first lighthouse. A warm light on a cold world, telling the universe, we are here, and we are staying. The moon is not the end. It never was. Even as humanity sets its first permanent boots into lunar dust, our eyes, our dreams, and our stories drift farther still, toward the red shimmer of Mars, and beyond, into the uncharted oceans of the cosmos. If the moon is the shore, then Mars is the next continent. And the stars, they are the great unknown. The Artemis program does not treat the moon as a final goal, but as a stepping stone, a training ground, a laboratory, a proving site for the impossible. Living on the moon will teach us what it takes to survive beyond Earth. How to extract water from rock. How to grow food in alien soil. How to build systems that can last not for days, but for decades. All of it prepares us for the longer voyage, to Mars, a place so far that a round trip could take over 2 years, with no chance for quick rescue or real-time conversation. It's not science fiction anymore. Mars is real, reachable, and waiting. There is something haunting about Mars. It is Earth-like, but not. It has seasons, winds, dust storms, canyons and volcanoes, but no seas, no forests, no life as we know it. And yet, it whispers of potential. Maybe once, long ago, Mars held rivers and lakes. Maybe even microbes. Today, it offers a challenge. Can we bring it to life again? Or at least live among its ancient bones? Unlike the moon, Mars has an atmosphere, thin, but enough to provide shelter from some radiation. It also has resources, water locked in ice, minerals in the soil, carbon dioxide to be turned into oxygen. The dream of a Martian base, a place where humans can live, work, and one day thrive, draws closer with every experiment, every robotic mission, every test flight here on Earth. We're not ready yet. But we're getting ready. Reaching Mars isn't just about rockets or habitats. It's about the human mind. A trip to Mars means months of isolation. No real-time communication. No horizon that leads back home. Can the human spirit endure that kind of distance? Artemis helps us find out. Life on the moon teaches astronauts to live in small teams, to handle loneliness, to stay sane and compassionate in extreme environments. These are not just technical skills. They are emotional frontiers. To go farther, we must grow deeper, more resilient, more connected, more aware of ourselves and one another. In that sense, the journey to Mars is not just outward. It's inward too. Mars is only the beginning. If we can learn to live on 2 worlds, we may one day learn to live on more. Jupiter's moons, Europa, Callisto, Ganymede, hide oceans beneath their icy crusts. Saturn's moon Titan has lakes of methane, alien and strange. Exoplanets circle distant stars, some small, rocky, and not so different from Earth. We may never reach most of them, but even dreaming of them reshapes us. It reminds us that we are not bounded by this one cradle. That perhaps, in the distant future, long after Artemis is only a memory, we will look up from another sky and remember that it all began here, with footprints in the lunar dust. With one rocket, one dream, one question whispered to the stars. Can we live out there? And the stars, in their own quiet way, seem to answer. Come and see. But as we reach outward, we must carry something else with us, wisdom. We are no longer explorers with empty hands. We bring with us technology, culture, history, and the ability to harm as much as to help. What we do on the moon, on Mars, in orbit and beyond, these choices matter. Will we build fair systems, or repeat the mistakes of our past? Will we respect alien worlds, or exploit them? Will we see space as a shared domain, or one to be conquered? These are not technical questions. They are ethical ones. The stars will not judge us, but future generations might. So we must go not only boldly, but gently. With care, with humility, with the understanding that to reach another world is not just a triumph of engineering, it is an act of profound trust. Trust in ourselves. Trust in our ability to grow. And as far as we go, we must never forget where we began. Earth is not just our launch pad, it is our soul. Every base we build, every ship we send, every new world we touch, carries with it the echo of Earth. The color of oceans in our memories. The scent of rain in our dreams. The sound of laughter under gravity that feels just right. We don't go to escape Earth. We go to understand it better. To appreciate it more. And, perhaps, to ensure its survival, because the more places life can thrive, the safer it becomes. In this light, space exploration is not abandonment. It is expansion of the human heart. So far, we have seen no other life. No cities among the stars. No signals from distant minds. The cosmos is vast. Quiet. Waiting. But maybe we are not meant only to discover. Maybe we are meant to be the story. To light up the silence. To be the voice in the dark. To leave signs that once, here, something beautiful emerged from a small, blue world, a species that wondered, and wandered, and wove dreams into motion. Artemis is the first chapter. The moon, our first campfire. Mars, our second shore. And the stars, the pages not yet written. And so we look up, still curious, still brave. Because the sky is not the limit. It is the invitation. In the silent darkness of space, the moon waits. Unchanging. Distant. Familiar. It has circled our world for over 4 billion years, pulling our tides, watching over our nights, and living in the corners of every myth, every lullaby, every ancient tale whispered beneath the stars. We've looked up at it for millennia. And now, once again, we go back. But this journey is not just about science, or rockets, or even survival. It is about something deeper. It is about reflection. Because when we go to the moon, we do not just explore another world. We look into a mirror, one that shows us who we are, who we've been, and who we hope to become. The moon holds no air, no water, no life. But it holds our story. Every footprint left by Apollo still sits undisturbed. Every flag, every piece of equipment, still there, untouched by time. It is a frozen photograph of a moment when humanity looked beyond its divisions and reached together for something greater. And now, as Artemis prepares to return, we ask ourselves, what will this new footprint say about us? Will it speak of a wiser species, one that learned from its past? Will it carry the presence of all humanity, not just a few, but the many? Will it echo with voices long unheard, women, people of color, those once excluded from the frontier? The moon does not judge. But it remembers. And so must we. There is something paradoxical about the moon. It is dead, yet it reflects life. It is barren, yet it inspires dreams. It is cold, yet it stirs our deepest emotions. Why? Because the moon doesn't just reflect sunlight, it reflects ourselves. Standing on its surface, astronauts see Earth as a glowing sphere in a sea of blackness. A fragile ball of blue and white, suspended in nothing. No borders, no flags, no divisions. Just home. And from that vantage point, something changes. Edgar Mitchell, an Apollo 14 astronaut, described it as an epiphany, a shift in consciousness. Looking back at Earth, he said, he saw not nations, but unity. Not conflict, but connection. This is called the overview effect, a psychological transformation that many astronauts experience. And perhaps it is something we all need. Because in the mirror of the moon, we see not only where we're going, but what we've become. And what we must still become. The Artemis program carries more than just equipment. It carries symbolism. The name itself is not random. Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo. A protector of nature, of wildness, of balance. And in choosing her, NASA made a quiet promise: this time, the journey will include everyone. The first woman will walk on the moon. The first person of color will walk on the moon. And they will do so not as symbols of tokenism, but as representatives of a changing humanity, a humanity more inclusive, more aware, more just. That, too, is part of exploration, not just discovering new places, but discovering new ways of being. In that sense, the moon becomes a canvas. A place where we can redraw the story, not of conquest, but of collaboration. Not of exclusion, but of unity. And yet, there is something timeless about this all. Long before telescopes, long before rockets, long before electricity, humans looked at the moon and wondered. We told stories of moon gods and rabbit spirits. We marked our calendars by its phases. We dreamed of flying to it, even when we had no wings. Now we return, not just with technology, but with centuries of longing. When we land again, we carry not just data, but myth. Not just instruments, but poetry. Because the moon is not just a place. It is a presence. A witness. A mirror to our soul. As we plant new flags and build new bases, we must ask ourselves, what do we leave behind? Not just physically, but philosophically. Will our footprints be symbols of peace, or of pride? Will our tools be used to build bridges, or to compete for resources? Will we remember that what we do there reflects who we are here? The moon, in all its stillness, invites us to pause. To listen. To remember that we are more than consumers, more than colonizers, more than engineers. We are storytellers. Dreamers. Beings capable of all. And awe may be the most important thing we bring with us. Let us imagine, just for a moment. A future astronaut stands alone on the lunar surface. The Earth hangs low on the horizon, blue and bright. They look back, not just at the planet, but at everything it holds, 8 billion lives. Wars and peace. Laughter and sorrow. Art, music, language, hope. And in that silence, they breathe. And in that breath, they feel what generations before them only imagined. A belonging to something far larger than themselves. That is the gift of the moon. It shows us not only how far we've come, but how much further we can go, if we go together. In returning to the moon, we are not escaping Earth. We are honoring it. We are seeking to understand its place in the larger dance of the cosmos, and our place within it. And in doing so, we touch something eternal. Because every journey outward is also a journey inward. Every launch into space echoes a launch into the unknown corners of the human spirit. And every time we gaze up at the moon, we see not just a rock in the sky, but a reflection of our highest hopes, our deepest questions, and a quiet reminder that we are still becoming. Still learning. Still reaching. The moon is not the destination. It is the mirror. And in its glow, we see ourselves. Not as we are, but as we could be. Thank you for joining us on this quiet journey to the moon and back. As we fall asleep under the same sky, may you carry a little stardust in your dreams. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow stargazer. Sleep well. And until next time.